Hello, folks. Nate Swick here. I am the podcast host of the American Birding Podcast, and also I do digital communications here at the ABA. And I'm really excited to kind of launch this new initiative with y'all tonight. It's a virtual bird club. I know that a lot of folks out there are not able to visit their normal bird clubs, their normal Audubon Society chapter meetings because of the social isolation suggestions from the CDC and others keeping people at home. But we definitely want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to get that bird club feeling here online from my extra bedroom. As you can see, hopefully my children will not come bursting in while we're trying to do this. And tonight, for the first meeting, for lack of a better word, of this virtual bird club, I am really excited to introduce my good friend Nick Lund. He's going to be here. Nick, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to the first meeting of the ABA Virtual Bird Club. Thank you for being my guinea pig and being willing to take this on. It's really great.
It's my pleasure to be here. Welcome to my 70s wood panel basement.
Absolutely. It's very Maine. I know that's where you're speaking
It's
from.
very Maine.
Yeah,
I
I'm sure
did
that.
cut all the boards. I cut all the boards myself.
Yeah, hewed them all and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Nick, if you're familiar with Nick Lund, he is on the internet as the Birdist. He does a lot of great stuff, does a lot of writing about birds, does a lot of speaking about birds. And so I'm really excited to have him here. I know he has a really great talk. Nick, what are you going to talk to us about tonight?
I'm going to take part in a classic tradition, which is starting beefs from afar. This is a great time for people who like to talk trash because there's no repercussions because no one is allowed to go anywhere near each other.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I am going to just start some beef. I'm going to lay it on the line, and I'm going to talk about state birds.
All right.
And how bad they are.
All right. So, Nick, I'm going to let you go ahead and let you go. I'm going to throw up your PowerPoint presentation right here. Nick, please take it away.
Hey, let's do it. Hello, everyone. Hello, Birdland. It's Nick out here. So the way this is going to work is I'm here in my 70s wood panel basement. I am talking through Skype, and it's being beamed out through the live stream. Nate is actually in charge of the PowerPoint presentation. And so I'm going to have to tell him to advance the slide from slide to slide when we get there. So just get ready for all kinds of technical difficulties, but I think this is going to go great. I do want to say, of course, I hope everyone is safe out there. I miss seeing you in person out on the trails. I hope you guys are seeing some good birds in your backyard and wherever you're headed safely. Take care, everyone. Let's get started. Let's have a good time talking about state birds. So this is a presentation called The Sorry State of State Birds, and it is a sorry state if you ask me. Nate, could you please advance the first slide? But enough about state birds. Let's talk about me. Forgot this one was in there to start off. I'm Nick. I write online about birds. You can find me at thebirdist.com, which is a website that I haven't updated the look of since like 2007. And you can find me on Twitter at thebirdist. I like to think of myself not really just a writer, but a sort of a journalist, right? I like to chase the hard-hitting stories and really follow a story to its bones. And so, Nate, if you could advance the slide, some of the stories I've worked on recently, some hard-hitting pieces like how many birds does Santa Claus see on Christmas Eve? Or how are the birds in Game of Thrones accurate? Or if I were a birding cyborg robot, what kind of features would I have? The sort of important stuff. Next, please. I'm also, and I want to mention this now, the founder of Google Street View Birding Facebook group. This is a perfect activity for those of you stuck inside. What we do, believe it or not, is that we go to Google Street View, we inch around the entire globe and try to identify birds that we see in the background of these images. It's very lame, but it is a way to pass the time. So if you're looking to do that, please find us on the internet. Next. I also, perhaps first and foremost, am a Mainer. I'm a proud resident, born and raised in the state of Maine. I have a tattoo of Maine on my arm, and I've loudly defended its merits to people across the country. Nate, some people are saying that the slides aren't showing. Is that right?
Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot to switch. It should be over very soon if it isn't already.
Okay, and it's going to pop ahead. Okay, cool. I'm a Mainer, everybody. I'm a Mainer. I love being from Maine, and I'm proud. And that means next slide, please. This should be the map of the country with a purple Maine on top. Is that where you're at? All right, cool. Being a Mainer means knowing our symbols and those things that we've chosen as our ambassadors, the things that represent the state of Maine and ourselves to the rest of the nation. That includes the white pine cone and tassel, the moose, the blueberry. These are the things that we've chosen to represent ourselves to the outside world. I learned these symbols as a kid, and I proudly incorporated them into my identity. And our state bird, the black-capped chickadee, is all part of that pride. It's similar to, next please, the bald eagle, the national bird of the United States. A majestic creature, as bold and beautiful as the country it represents, although these times we may be doubting our own majesty. The bald eagle has been our official symbol since the early days in the United States. After the American independence, it became apparent that we needed a national seal to represent our new nation. And I mean an insignia, not the marine mammal. But this task was given to Ben Franklin, and he failed, and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and some others, and they all failed. And eventually the task went to the Secretary of the Congress, a man named Charles Thompson, in 1782. Next, please. So Thompson looked around, he looked at some of the existing proposals for the Great Seal, including this one right here, drawn by a 28-year-old man named William Barton. He included actually 3 birds on his design. I don't know if he was a secret birder or not, but he has like a dove on the Lady Liberty's hand, and there's a phoenix in the fire. I hope that's a phoenix. It could be just a chicken roasting or something, but also a white eagle at the top there. Thompson took a look at this. He knew that the eagle had been a symbol of power since ancient times. It had been used by countries like Mexico and Greece as their symbol. And he decided to adapt that part of this insignia as our American symbol, but substituting that white eagle for our native bald eagle. And so next, he came up with this. Even though it looks like something I drew on my math class notebook in 7th grade, this is the first draft of the national symbol of the United States, our national seal. And there it is. Next, please. I should say, and we all know this right now, that nothing happens in the government without somebody complaining about it, of course. Ben Franklin famously complained that Barton's drawing of the bald eagle looked like a turkey, and he suggested in a letter to his daughter that the turkey would actually make a better national bird. I'm going to read part of that letter to you because I think it really strikes a chord for us birders. In the letter, Franklin eviscerates the choice of the bald eagle, and he says, quote, "For my own part, I wish," this is my Ben Franklin impression. I don't know what he sounds like. "For my own part, I wish the bald eagle had not been chosen as a representative of our own country. He is a bird of bad moral character. He does not get his living honestly. You may have seen him perched on some dead tree where, too lazy to fish for himself, he watches the labor of the fishing hawk, the osprey. And when that diligent bird has at length taken a fish, the bald eagle pursues him and takes it from him." I don't know how you're feeling about our national bird right now, but that's how Franklin felt. Next, please. And like it or not, the bald eagle has become a real true symbol of the United States. It sort of stands in as a shorthand representation of our nation, which I think is something that you want a symbol to do. Apologies for any James Buchanan fans reading closely at these political cartoons. There's some vicious dunks on James Buchanan in there. Next, please. Nevertheless, the bald eagle has endured as our national symbol. and what an honorable tradition it has earned. Next, please. So I do need to say, and I hate to be this guy, although I feel like I am very much this guy. Nowhere in the laws of the United States does it specify that the bald eagle is our national bird. There are several national symbols that are codified into law, like the rose is our official floral emblem, and oak trees are our official trees, and our official mammal is the bison. But nowhere does it say that the bald eagle is our national bird. It's just represented on our Great Seal. So do with that what you would like. Next, please. All right, but what about these states, right? Each state likes to think of itself as its own little nation, complete with its cute little individual flag and motto and symbols. And those symbols include, for all 50 states and the District of Columbia, shout out to my homies, an official state bird. All states have them. The trouble is that unlike the bald eagle, which was chosen because it's beautiful and powerful and strong, our state birds are quite literally all over the map. Some of them are good. Some of the choices are lazy and uncreative and boring, or otherwise unworthy of representing anything at all, if you ask me. And that's what I want to talk to you about today is the state birds and how crummy they are. But I must digress once again before we start into a discussion of how we got state birds in the first place. Next, please. We have this woman to thank for all this. This is Catherine Bell Tippett. She was a woman who moved to St. Petersburg, Florida from Maryland in 1902. And when her husband died, she became a full-time conservationist and activist. She was a remarkable woman. She was called, quote, the most remarkable woman in St. Petersburg, high praise. She, in turn, led groups like the Women's Town Improvement Association, the Florida Federation of Women's Clubs, the YWCA, the American Forestry Foundation. In 1921, she became the first woman to run for the state legislature in Florida. She lost almost assuredly to an old white man, but she came in close. Next, please. And importantly, for our purposes, she loved birds. She was a tireless advocate for the protection of birds. She founded the St. Petersburg Audubon Society and was its president for 33 years. She fought in the Florida legislature for protection for wildlife in Florida and beyond, including birds and the Everglades. She produced 10 bird sanctuaries in Pinellas County alone. She was part of the St. Petersburg Audubon Society, which was instrumental in starting the Florida Fish and Game Commission and passing the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. And she also was big on education. She realized that in order to get more people interested in bird protection, she needed to get them educated. And so she was into starting conversations about birds. So next, please. And that's how these state birds came up. She said, I want people to know more about the birds in their area, in their state. And so I think that states should start state birds. So through her network of the Federation of Women's Clubs, which are groups that are still around the country, she launched campaigns all across the country to get them to take up state birds. So that's great. And I totally agree with her. I'm glad we have state birds. They are a powerful tool for education. My problem is that when Mrs. Tippett was organizing state birds, she really didn't care what birds were chosen, right? The majority of birds were chosen by some kind of vote, mostly among school children who we all know, of course, know nothing. The ballots were handed to students most often, narrowed down to just a few choices. And so, in my opinion, I don't think that the state birds accurately represent the states that they come from. So next slide, please. But what does that mean? What does it mean to be a state bird? It's actually a question that is rarely asked and was not really seemingly asked at all when these birds were adopted. How should a state decide what bird should represent it, right? The bald eagle was chosen because it's powerful and grand, which are characteristics that America wanted to project about itself. But states don't seem to have put the same care into their state birds. Um, and there are some questions that you should answer about this. For example, should it be a species that is somehow special to the state? Should it be a rare bird, one that you have to sort of go looking for? Or should it be a common bird that you can see in your backyard all the time? Should it be a resident bird, a bird that stays in your area year round? Or can it be migratory, which means that your state bird isn't in your state for part of the year? There has never been a concerted effort to answer these questions or to ask them. And that's why I think the map of state birds looks the way it does. Next, please. For example, this is the American robin. Guess what state this is a state bird of? In this example, it's the state bird of Michigan. Excuse me. What's so Michigan-y about an American robin, you ask? Well, good question. First of all, it already has a geographic denominator in its name. It's the American robin, so it's not the Michigan robin. It's found in literally every state except Hawaii. There's nothing particularly Michigan-y about it. Why do they choose it as their mascot? I don't know. Was there perhaps a better choice? A bird that really only lives in Michigan, of all places, and is in dire need of education and conservation? Next slide, please. Yes, there is, of course. The Curlin's warbler. Come on, man. It's sitting right there. If there's ever a bird that needs education and awareness and a bird that can engender some pride in your state, Curlin's warbler is it. The robin gives you nothing. So I'm getting fired up already. But let's move on to the meat here, which is the next slide. We're going to grade all 50 of these babies, starting at the top. I went to school for a long time, and I got all kinds of grades. And so I know how to give out a good grade when I want to. And so I'm going to list out all the birds from the best to the worst. How do I do it? Good question. There are a couple things that are important to me. One, I want there to be a strong connection between the bird and the state, or the bird's history and the people there. I think a bird should somehow epitomize the landscape of the state. Like when you close your eyes and you think of that state, that bird is part of the landscape that you picture, right? But I think the best birds are the ones that have really been sort of embraced by the people of the state. Birds that aren't just sort of a bird chosen out of nowhere, but really part of the state's identity. So let's get to some of those top birds first. Next slide, please. We're going to start with our A+. We're going to go A pluses. Okay, let's go. Number one, Baltimore Oriole. Number one with a bullet. I love it. Orange, black, and white, or the colors on the coat of arms of Lord Baltimore. And the Baltimore Oriole is named after him. It's a beautiful bird, number one. It's beloved by everybody who sees it. And the bird has been embraced by the state. Their team name is the Baltimore Orioles. It's a bird that engenders a lot of pride around the state, and I think is a perfect choice for the state bird. It is my favorite choice of all 50 state birds is the Baltimore Oriole. First in my heart, last in the American League East. I love it. Next slide, please. Number two, A+. Caught you surprise on this one. Scissor-tailed flycatcher, right? This is the state bird of Oklahoma. A great choice from Oklahoma. It's a beautiful bird. It's a bird that is easy to identify for a lot of folks, so you can point it out. It's not one that's going to be in your backyard, but it's common enough in the right places in Oklahoma where you can see it around. And it's a great symbol, and you can see what it means when a state really embraces its state symbol. It's the Oklahoma chose to represent it on their quarter. So there you go. Next slide, please. This is my final A+. The brown pelican of Louisiana. I love this with all my heart. Louisiana is a weird state. They're proud of being weird and playing to the beat of their own drum, dancing to the beat of their own drum. The pelican is very much in that vein. It's a big, funny-looking, ungainly bird, but it's synonymous with Louisiana. It's when you picture a coastal bayou or a dock on the bay, you picture a pelican sitting on there. And I'm really proud that, like the Orioles, the sporting community has embraced it. Instead of choosing some tough bird name, like, hawks or eagles or something, they chose the pelicans, which are fearsome in their own way if you've seen them eat a pigeon or whatever they've done. So A plus for those 3 states. Congratulations. Next slide, please. The A's. A's. These are still great. These are birds. There's a bunch of them, which I think really epitomize the landscape of the state. They haven't really been embraced in the same way that the oriole and the pelican have been, but they still are perfect representatives of what the state is, I think. So let's start there. Number 1, roadrunner and cactus wren in Arizona and New Mexico. Perfect choices, right? When you close your eyes and you think of New Mexico, you think of, that desert landscape with a roadrunner running across it, or you hear the sound of a cactus wren. That's sort of a soundtrack of your time in Arizona. These are excellent choices, solid A's. The next 2, please. Hawaii, South Carolina, the nene goose and the Carolina wren. Here's a surprise here. Lots of birds are named after states already. Very few of them are actually the state birds of those states. I know it's crazy. You think it's sitting right there, but it's rarely done. So kudos to South Carolina for choosing the Carolina wren, a beautiful bird which is a songster and is in everybody's backyard, but is not, eating out of a dumpster or something. Good choice, South Carolina. Next slide, please. Colorado, the lark bunting. Someone on Twitter was bemoaning their state bird, the lark bunting, and I don't get it. I love it. I think it's a great choice. It's sort of out of left field. It doesn't cater to those mountain people. It's sort of a flatland eastern bird, which I dig. And then the purple finch in New Hampshire, a great choice. How's everything going, Nate? We doing all right?
Keep up.
Okay, cool.
Keep it up, Nick. You're doing great.
All right,
keep loving it.
Just checking in. Purple finch, beautiful bird, represents New Hampshire, those sort of conifer woods. I love it. Next slide, please. Yeah, Minnesota and Vermont doing well. The common loon, is one of the most popular birds anywhere it is found. I know a lot of people in Maine would love to have the common loon as our state bird, but Minnesota beat us to it, so kudos to them. Vermont's got the hermit thrush, a lovely little songster. I appreciate the audio shout out there, a bird that you can hear more often than seen, probably. And then last but not least in my A's, I have Pennsylvania and Georgia. Pennsylvania throwing a little curveball there with a ruffed grouse. Very cool. Although this is part of a slight trend in state birds, which is that these were birds chosen by people who want to shoot them. But that's okay. Georgia coming out of nowhere with a brown thrasher. I really love that choice. It's sort of a under the radar pick, a skulking little brown bird, not the most famous bird. But I give kudos to Georgia. For a while, Georgia actually had 3 of their professional sports teams named after birds, the Hawks and the Falcons, which are still going, and their hockey team used to be called the Thrashers before they went to somewhere. So shout out to Georgia. You're doing great. All right, next slide, please. We're moving down the line a little bit. Moving down the line to an A-. I just have one A-. This is a bird. I like the choice, but there were some better choices, okay? You'll see what I mean. Next slide, please. This beautiful little chunker, the only quail representative on the list here. It is, of course, a California quail, which is very cool. California, unlike most states, actually chose to go with a state bird that's named after their state. But, there are a lot of birds named after California. And I think one of them in particular is perhaps would be a better choice as a state bird. It's a bird that's large and majestic and needs conservation help and needs people to be educated about it. Next slide, please. Of course, the California condor. It's the biggest bird in the whole country, befitting of one of the biggest states and one of the most populous states and one of the best birdie states in the country. I don't know why they went with the quail over the condor, but it is what it is. They do their own thing out there in California. Next, bees. So again, these are some that are okay, but not quite the best. So we'll go to the first one. Um, Alaska, the biggest state in the country, tough people, tough living. They went with not the murderous gyrfalcon or the incredibly gorgeous snowy owl. Each of which sort of is the most lives there more than anywhere else, or can be found there readily. They went with a funny sounding walking sort of chicken-ish bird, the willow ptarmigan. No disrespect to ptarmigan fans out there, but Alaska just has a lot more good choices on the table. Again, this is a win for the shooting things lobby down here. Next, please. Okay. I like this bird because it's the only gull represented anywhere on the list of state birds. There are no shorebirds, no seabirds except for this bird. And so I give some extra points for that. This is, of course, the state bird of Utah, believe it or not. I have to dock a point or two because if you look at the law that Utah passed to establish this bird as their state bird, they just said the state bird shall be the seagull, which birders out there know that sort of rubs us a little bit the wrong way, who don't like the term seagull, but there it is. So here's where it gets a little tricky. The bird they're referring to is the California gull. So what that means is the state of Utah chose their state bird, a species named after another state. So that's weird, right? That's weird, except if you think about why they did this. And there actually is a very good reason for doing this. So the reason is that this California gull is very important to Mormon history. In 1847, when Mormons arrived in the Great Salt Lake and were trying to plant crops that they desperately needed to survive, there was a big cloud of crickets and locusts that descended upon the crops. These gulls swooped down and saved the day. If you could advance a slide, please. This is an image of these gulls coming in and saving the crops from the Mormons. You can see the woman collapsing with joy and pride that they were saved by the gulls. And so that's, even though it's named after another state, it's a great choice because of its important place to Utah history. And actually, here's what I'm going to say, and I hope some ABA folks are listening. California's got enough birds named after them. Let's just name this bird the Utah gull, right? Then everybody wins. We wrap it up, okay? California doesn't need any more. Next slide, please. My last B, I have this on the list because it's the only woodpecker represented, which I do love. Everybody loves the northern flicker. This is the state bird of Alabama, and so that's cool, a great choice. However, I dock it points because it's Alabama chose the flicker because of the Confederate Army. They had a cavalry. You can see their uniforms there that were trimmed in yellow. And some Alabama fella, when he saw the uniform, said, "Hey, you just look like a yellowhammer." Yellowhammer being the colloquial name for flicker. And sort of that stuck for Alabamans. And so it's not really even bird related, but I don't like supporting the Confederate Army. So I give it a B. I think that's even generous. Next, C. So from here on out, we're getting into something that really grinds my gears. We're getting into states that repeat state birds. I think one of the cardinal sins of state birds is two states that have the same bird. There are more than 700 birds to choose from. The whole point of having a bird that is your state bird is that it's your state bird. It shouldn't be the state bird of another state. It fires me up. But it happens way more than you think. So let's get into it right now. And I'm going to start with one that hurts. Are we on the chickadee slide? This one hurts. This is my boy, the black-capped chickadee. Maine's state bird. Maine chose the black-capped chickadee in 1927. We were among the first wave of state birds after Catherine Bell Tippett got the initiative going. It was passed at a meeting at the State Federation of Women's Clubs in Kennebunkport in 1926. They were hoping in our newspaper. So I went back in the stacks of our local newspaper and I read about the passage of this bill. And the Federation said that they wanted to have a state bird. Remember, this was a new idea. They wanted to have a state bird because, quote, it would be desirable to have a state bird in order to stimulate interest in birds in general and to take official notice of their value as insect destroyers, which I guess was important back then. The chickadee, so the Federation in the newspaper gave a great quote about why they chose the chickadee, and I really like it, so I'm going to read it. They said, quote, "The chickadee stays here year-round. It is friendly and easily attracted to humans. And according to entomologists, it is one of the greatest destroyers of insects and plants. Further, the qualities of the chickadees have the qualities of optimism, cheeriness, friendliness, resourcefulness, and industry, which stand forth as the qualities of the citizens of Maine," which I think is true and apt, and I love it. Here's the problem. Massachusetts, those punks, waltzed along in 1941 after we had had the state bird for more than a decade and also picked the state bird, the black-capped chickadee is their state bird. So we doubled it up. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later. I'm upset, and we'll talk about it later. Next, please. Oh, well, actually, I want to talk a little bit about some other choices for Maine. I don't think we should change our state bird. Well, I do, but we'll talk about that in a second. But if we were forced to, what would be some other choices for my beloved state? Evening grosbeak, that's a cool one, not chosen. How about a goshawk? A bird so awesome, I couldn't find any pictures of it that weren't like ripping apart some bloody carcass. An Atlantic puffin is a cool choice, a bird that breeds only in Maine of all the states, although that would sort of probably anger some of the people living inland. Trust me, I'm a Mainer, I know this. I think pileated woodpecker would be a great one. It's an awesome bird. Everybody loves a woodpecker. It's not chosen. Not really unique to Maine, but I think still is a good choice. Next slide, please. All right. And so for some of these now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the birds. I'm going to give some suggestions for an improved state bird. Here we are with the bluebird lobby. On the left, we have the mountain bluebird, which is the state bird of Idaho and Nevada. On the right, we have the eastern bluebird, which is the state bird of Missouri and New York. Next slide, please. Idaho, I think something just fell in your lap. You have an endemic bird in Idaho, the Cassia crossbill. So let's get the legislation going and just wrap that up right now. For Nevada, I think the black-throated sparrow is a beautiful choice. Who doesn't love that? Eastern bluebird, you can keep it in Missouri. New York, let's be serious. You should be the dove, rock dove. Should be the pigeon. We're not kidding anybody with that. Let's do it. All right, it's getting worse. Next slide, please. These are some Ds. And there's a lot of them. Next slide, please. 3 states each have American goldfinch and American robin. The goldfinch is represented by Iowa, New Jersey, and Washington. The American robin is the state bird of Connecticut, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Again, I don't get this. It makes me angry. It's like naming your kid after the same name as your neighbor's kid or something. Just wrong. Just feels wrong. Let's go to the next one. So redoing these, I left the goldfinch for Iowa. New Jersey, I gave the red knot. No one has a shorebird on the list. This is a beauty, needs of education and awareness. Washington should be the varied thrush. It's an awesome bird. It's beautiful. Let's do that. For Connecticut, I mean, it's a Connecticut warbler. Who are we kidding? I know it barely is found in Connecticut ever, but it's still named after your state. You should take what you can get. Kirtland's warbler for Wisconsin, or for Michigan rather. And my choice for Wisconsin is the bobolink. Awesome bird. Everybody loves it. Looks cool. We need to protect our habitat. Done. Next, please. Oh boy. Bad one. 5 states have the northern mockingbird as their state bird. 5 of them. Mississippi, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and Arkansas all have this drab little dumpster trash eating, singing, pretty cool, whatever bird as their state official bird. Next down, please. You can see that this is not a bird that's particularly unique to any of those states. It lives everywhere from California to Maine. This is not a bird that when you think of it you think of it in any particular habitat in any particular state. Next, please. I last did this presentation in Texas, and I did some research into why Texas chose the mockingbird as their state bird. I actually like the reasoning they chose for it. If you look in there, it says, and this was done in 1927, they chose it. They said the mockingbird is found in all parts of the state in winter and summer, in the city and in the country, on the prairie and in the woods and hills. It is a singer of distinctive type, and this is the important part, it is a fighter for the protection of his home, falling, if need be, in its defense, like any true Texan. Which is a bold ask, I think, of your state bird, that it's going to die for your state. But hey, that's Texas for you. So you can also see there that the state bird, the choice of the mockingbird was controversial from the get-go. Folks suggested turkey, folks suggested golden-cheeked warbler. I think those are some good choices. The next slide, you can see Texas, it's got more birds than any other state, right? I think. Which one has more? California?
Sorry, California has more.
California has more? Okay, well, Texas has a lot, all right?
And dropping out back out.
Texas has a lot. And it's got an awesome ones to choose from, ones that really no other state has, like a green jay, like golden-cheeked warbler, like Kalima warbler, like apple mottled falcon. I think loggerhead shrike could be an awesome choice, right? Doesn't that represent toughness of a Texan better than some dumb mockingbird? What about a great horned owl? 0 states have owls as their state bird, even though everybody loves owls. So those are some other choices. Next slide, please. Florida also got some great choices. Also a state with incredible bird life. The snail kite is the only place you can find that in the States. Painted bunting is one of the best birds in the country. Who doesn't want that on their license plate or whatever? Or how about a bird that's literally endemic to your state? It doesn't live anywhere else but freaking Florida. The Florida scrub jay, or Florida jay as it'll be called. Who knows what's going to happen with that? Nope, they went with a dumb mockingbird. Next slide, please. Mississippi also has the mockingbird. Mississippi, my beloved former home. I know you have nothing else going on for you. Why did you choose the same state bird as a bunch of other neighbors, especially when you have a Mississippi kite sitting right there? The Mississippi kite, it's amazing. It's a beautiful, awesome raptor. Go with that. Tennessee warbler, I think that should be the state bird of Tennessee. Arkansas, you can keep the stupid mockingbird if someone wants it so bad. It's all yours. Fine. Okay, next, please. Meadowlark time. The western meadowlark is the state bird of 6 states: Kansas, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Oregon, and Wyoming. That's far too many states to have this wire sitter as their state bird. There are a lot of better choices. Montana, I go with Swainson's hawk. Come on. Nebraska, the sandhill crane, named after the preferred habitat along the Platte River in Nebraska. Pretty much named for you. North Dakota, how about a chestnut-collared longspur? Huh? How about that? Oregon, chestnut-back chickadee. Let's keep the chickadees going. Wyoming, prairie falcon. Prairie falcon. You have a falcon that lives in your state. Next slide, please. Oh my God. So many cardinals. 7 states have chosen the cardinal as their state bird: Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, Ohio, Virginia, West Virginia. I hate it. I get it. They're pretty. They're red. You see them. They're in love with the partners and everything. But they're just not very interesting. And there's tons of other interesting birds to choose from. If you're trying to educate your citizenry about the birds in your state, you want to choose something other than just the dumb cardinals chipping in your bushes. Illinois, how about greater prairie chicken? Right? One of the last strongholds down there. Cerulean warbler, probably the most beautiful thing in West Virginia. Kentucky warbler, Kentucky. It's named after Kentucky. It's called a Kentucky warbler. North Carolina, Carolina chickadee. No one's chosen that. Ohio, golden winged warbler. Come on now. Virginia, keep the cardinal. Fine. I'm tired of talking about it. Okay, those are my D's, but we're not done. Next slide, please. F. There are some F's. Let's jump to them now. Next slide. 2 states have chickens as their state bird, chickens. Domesticated birds that are kept in pens and that you eat them. It makes sense when you think about the states because, okay, it's Delaware and Rhode Island are the 2 smallest states, and I'm not offending the ABA. I know I love Delaware. I love birding in Delaware. Delaware is some of the most underrated, amazing bird life in the country. But they are, I think, have a little Napoleonic complex. I think there's a Delaware blue hen. It's named after Delaware. It's their breed or whatever. And so they went with that. Fine, do what you need to do. Rhode Island red, same thing. Rhode Island has nothing going on. They're tiny. This is their endemic species, the Rhode Island red. So, okay, rock and roll. I think it's terrible that you're choosing a domesticated eating bird as your state bird. It doesn't educate anybody. It doesn't help conservation. It doesn't do anything. But that's what you did. But there's one left. Next slide, please. F minus. I've never gotten an F minus, I promise. I don't know if it's a real thing, but I feel like this bird deserves an F minus. It's my least favorite state bird of all the state birds. It's the last on the list. Next slide, please. It is the ring-necked pheasant of South Dakota. This is a game bird that is native to a different continent, that is captured and just thrown out into the fields where it scampers around for its life. This is not a native bird in any way to South Dakota. It is a bird that is just hunted for sport. I love the bird. It's beautiful. Kudos to it. I love its survival. But I think it is an absolute travesty that the state has chosen a non-native game fowl as their state bird. I don't like it. Thank you. That's all 50. I have one more thing I want to talk about. Next slide, which is how do you change these things? Can you change a state bird if it's really bad? Many states have tried, believe it or not. Florida, there has been repeat efforts to change it, most often to the Florida scrub jay. I encourage you to do a little Bing search on this story. There's this NRA lobbyist woman who squashes every attempt to change a state bird. In Nebraska, they've changed it, or Michigan, I'm sorry, they've attempted to change it. So people do try to accomplish this. And next slide, please. So have I. And so I'm going to tell you about my brief attempt to change Maine's state bird. Here's what went down. I had just started at Maine Audubon, my beloved employer. Please go join as a member or help us out. MaineAudubon.org. We're the greatest. I had just started. I was like a week into the job, and I said, hey, I want to take a look here at the law that Maine passed to establish the black-capped chickadee, which we all know is our state bird, as our state bird. So I went and looked at the law, and all the law says, the entirety of the law is one sentence: the state bird shall be the chickadee. That's it. And I, being a birder, said, that's interesting, because Maine has 2 chickadees. And so when you say the state bird shall be the chickadee, what chickadee are you talking about? In Maine, of course, we have the black-capped chickadee, familiar from Kittery to Aroostook County, in everybody's backyard, all over the place, beloved black-capped chickadee. We also have, in the northern part of the state, the boreal chickadee. Less abundant, less common, harder to see in all ways, but still a chickadee, a hardy bird, and one that we should be proud of. So I said, interesting, and I sort of filed that away. And about a week later, I happened to be making small talk with a reporter for the Portland Press-Herald. And in trying to think of things to say, I said, hey, did you know that Maine doesn't really have a state bird? And then next slide. Of course, it was all over the newspaper after that. This was front page news in Maine for a while. Is our chickadee an imposter? And once that happened, some other people took it up. A legislator in Skowhegan, Betty Austin, took up the mantle with her students, and they put a bill into the legislature trying to get clarity around the situation. And the idea being that maybe we should change our state bird to the boreal chickadee. Next slide, please. So I went up there. I testified in front of the state legislature about boreal and black-capped chickadees. Maine Audubon did not officially take a position on the bill either way. That we were there for clarity and for information. But I said that this was a problem, the lack of clarity in the bill. I said it's like going into a pizza place and just saying, I'd like the pizza. You gotta specify what kind of pizza you want. You know what I mean? I think it's a problem. The committee did not agree. Next slide. This is a little article here about the hearing that was held. There were people who were concerned about the cost. There were representatives saying that I don't want to vote for a state bird that doesn't live in my district, which I get. It all became very political, as you might imagine. And next slide. It's over. I lost. The bill didn't go anywhere. It didn't get out of committee, and that was that. So that was my brief flirtation and failed attempt to change Maine state bird. Next slide, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you. I would love to hear from you about your state bird, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, whether there's something that would be a better choice. Holler at me. I think we're somehow taking questions somewhere. And so
we'll try to take some questions. Nick, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I do have one piece of business to note for folks that have been listening. Thank you all so much for stopping by virtually and listening to our bird club. We had almost like 300 people listening at one point. That's like 4 regular sized bird clubs. I feel like that's pretty impressive. One thing I want to say before then, if you enjoyed this sort of virtual bird club, we'd love to keep doing more of it. I hope that some other people will see what we're doing here and say, hey, I could do that. I could be a person giving a presentation on Facebook or Twitter. Please get in touch with me at naswick@aba.org, and we'll hook you up. We'll do this for someone else. But I do want to say one thing is, this is a difficult time for a lot of people. This COVID-19 emergency has really thrown a lot of us for a loop. We at the ABA are no different. We have had to postpone a lot of our events that we had planned on doing later this year. We have lost a lot of ad revenue because obviously we get a lot of revenue from our friends in the bird travel industry, and they are justifiably having to pull back. But membership is still there. If you want to join the ABA now, we have a special deal for that. I'm going to throw it up here. If you want to go to aba.org/join and type in the code Birdwell2020, it's right there above me, Birdwell2020, all caps, no spaces, and you can get an ABA membership for $15 off. 15 whole Yankee dollars off an ABA membership. There's no better time to do it than right now. Please go and join us, help us out. And we're going to take some questions, Nick, and I'm going to leave that code right up there, aba.org/join. Please go ahead and join us. You get great magazines. You get to help support stuff like this. Nick, people mentioned D.C. You used to live in D.C. Why didn't you talk about the D.C. birds?
Sorry, my homies in D.C., the wood thrush is our official district bird, and what a wonderful choice it is. It's a beautiful bird. We can hear it every spring. It lives in Rock Creek Park singing its little heart out. It's endangered by all the cats up there and all the people are walking around, the dogs running around. Sorry to my DC Audubon friends for not mentioning the wood thrush. It's an awesome state bird. I'd give it a solid A.
Yeah. Oh, and also, I knew this would happen because I talked to you about this before we went live. We had a few people mention Canadian provincial birds.
Yes. The list of state birds for the Canadian provinces is awesome. Mwah,
yeah,
to Canada.
It's very good.
As usual, they best us in all the important things. Let me read it really quickly because every sort of failing that we have in the States, they have filled. So let me do this alphabetically, I think. Alberta.
Right. Yeah, there's like 10 provinces, so you should be able to get that.
Yeah, I'll do it quick.
Yeah.
Alberta, great horned owl, awesome. British Columbia, stellar stay, beautiful. Manitoba, great gray owl.
Yeah,
are you kidding
excellent.
me? Best choice.
Yeah.
New Brunswick, black-capped chickadee, well, it's the only one in Canada, fine. Newfoundland and Labrador, Atlantic puffin, cool. Northwest Territories, gyrfalcon. Nova Scotia, osprey, awesome. None of it, rock ptarmigan, that's okay. Ontario, common loon. Prince Edward Island, blue jay. Quebec, snowy owl. Saskatchewan, sharp-tailed grouse, bold choice, I love it. Yeah. Yukon Territories, common raven.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 across the board.
Yeah.
My home and faithful. What's this? My home in I don't remember
Native
the other one
land,
now.
yes.
Native land, my home in native land. Thank
And
you.
also, we had a few people ask, what are you drinking, Nick?
Oh, I'm drinking some Maine beer. This is Allagash White, of course,
Yeah.
out of a dusty old Celtics cup.
David Paul asked, how much is a full-page ad run? I would suggest you to get in contact with John Lowry at jlowry@aba.org. He can help you out. He's the guy. If anyone has any other questions, please shoot them in the comments. Nick, great presentation. Really enjoyed it. I'm amazed that you got through all 50 birds in under an hour. That was
I think
really
about it a lot,
actually.
Thanks for having me so much. Thanks to the ABA. I hope everybody.
I got my earbuds went out. So if anyone has any questions for Nick, leave them in the comments. I'm gonna get my sound figured out real quick. And
cheers. Be safe, everybody.
all right, well, so we're good. And so let's see here. Everyone says thanks. That's great. Great job, Nick. I want to thank you again for doing this for us. And
My pleasure.
And if anyone has any other questions, please leave them in the comments. Nick, just keep an eye on this for maybe a little while, and you can throw in there and get them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get me on Twitter as well if you want to ask other questions. Or
he is at the Birdist, and we're at ABA. And once again, if you want to join the ABA, there's no better time than now. aba.org/join. Birdwell 2020. It's right there above me. Put that hashtag, put that code in. You get $15 off an ABA membership. That's all ABA memberships. Thank you so much, Nick. We'll see you next time.
Bye. See you later.
Bye, guys.